Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. This week is the week of the Texas Rally for Life. You probably saw some footage last week from DC, if the media actually covered it, with kids playing in the snow and just a winter wonderland at our nation's capital for the National March for Life. So the one in Texas usually is not on the same weekend to accommodate the fact that a lot of people from Texas do go to that event, including my son who was there. My oldest son, Johnny, was up there. But we're going to talk about the Texas Rally for Life, which is tomorrow. If you're watching this on Friday, from 1 to 3 at the state capitol. Go to our website, txvalues.org. Check out social media to find out all the details. Love to have you there. But we're going to have a great guest today on this issue. January sort of just become the month of the life issue. We're probably going to move away from that slightly to some extent, or it's not going to be just about January, because we know Roe versus Wade, which was decided in January, was actually overturned a year or so ago in June. So we're going to have some significance probably as we move forward on the month of June. But we're going to cover that, some other issues. There's a special election going on right now. Hey, listen, if you're new to the show, we talk about the issues of faith, family, and freedom in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media. This is a show that we do on Facebook and radio once a week, but it's also on podcasts, iTunes, SoundCloud, a lot of different formats out there. You can click the podcast link on our website, txvalues.org, to see where you can find us. So that means anywhere you are, at any time, I don't know, 3 a.m, who knows what your schedule's like. You're on the other side of the world, and you're like, I want to know what Texas Values talked about this week. You can certainly do that. We've been doing this now for 5 years. I think we've been running almost 5 or 6 years. So 300 to 400 episodes, a lot of great guests that we've had. And today is no different. Melissa Ohden is going to be our guest today on the Texas Values Report. She is the founder and director of the Abortion Survivors Network. It is a healing and advocacy organization for abortion survivors. She's an abortion survivor herself. It's hard to say that too when you say, because you're like, wow, wait a minute, what does that mean? Hold on a second. An abortion and you survived it. And I don't think a lot of people don't even think people like that exist. She found out she was an abortion survivor at 14. Many years later, got involved in this effort and has been doing a great job for quite some time. Melissa, welcome to the Texas Values Report.
Always good to be with y'all.
You bet. Well, look, we were getting comfortable with each other. You and I have interacted over the years. So just encouraged and glad for the courageous work that you continue to do. I saw you not too long ago at an event here in Texas, and I saw your appearance briefly on EWTN. We were live streaming their live stream, and so I saw when you came on. But you're no stranger to this movement, if you will, someone who's been really central to the messaging in the movement. And so I'm glad to have this conversation with you today. Has it been a busy month for you?
Yeah, I mean, January is both the longest and shortest month of the year, right? In the pro-life movement. Right. So, but you're right. I mean, even when you were talking about, right, the history of January and then, June in terms of what happens next, I think, that's what we're learning in the movement is we still need to mourn and, remember what happened that fateful day in 1973 in January. And then also at the same time, right, use June to celebrate the win for life. So here we are.
Well, and I appreciate you accommodating us today. We had some technology issues. I know you're traveling, and so usually we would have you on a live video, but rest assured, and I'm looking at your headshot there, this beautiful imagery that you put together in a headshot will be shown to our audience and, while you're traveling. And so thank you for accommodating us. And it's good for people to see that, though, by the way, right? I want people to recognize who the face is and the personalities. And sometimes that really helps put a name with a face. But I'm glad that we can have this conversation. I know your story. Some people do. A lot of people probably do. But maybe some don't. Maybe some people that are watching today and listening are new to the life movement. Maybe they got more involved after Roe versus Wade was overturned. And they're like, whoa, I should be paying attention to this issue. So tell us a little bit of background about you and your story and why it's significant to the movement.
Yeah, most people come into the movement, right, because of either beliefs or experience, right? And usually it's these two things combined. And that's how I came to be in the movement, because I am a baby who survived an abortion. I can age myself pretty quickly. I survived an abortion 4 years after Roe. So it was 1977 when my birth mother was forced to have a saline infusion abortion that poisoned and scalded me over a 5-day period. I know now through my medical records. I soaked in this toxic salt solution for 5 days, should have had my life successfully ended by it. On the 5th day of the abortion procedure, instead of being delivered as a quote unquote successful abortion, I was accidentally born alive. And
Wow.
I think that's shocking for most people. Even in the pro-life movement, Jonathan, I meet so many people who go, "What? I had no idea that babies actually survive abortions." And how would we? I mean, how would we know it when we look at mainstream media? How would you know it when you look at the messaging of the abortion industry and their lobby? And so it's really been, my life's mission to not only use my voice, but to find other people like me, heal them, empower them, equip them, give them space to share their story, and then ultimately share that with the world to say, no, you know what? Babies survive abortions. That tells us something about the humanity of every preborn baby. And at the same time, bring healing to people who are so impacted by this.
Now, look, I mean, and personal stories can be so important, right? They connect people to your point. Oh, that surely doesn't happen, or I never heard of anyone that exists like that. Not to mention how difficult I can imagine it is to talk about such a personal issue. You survived death, right? I mean, they were intending to end your life, and you survived that. And so for a lot of people, that's too much to talk about. So that,
Right.
it's got to be
Right.
part of the reason why people don't come forward. Shame, who knows what's all mixed up into, these equations. And so I don't even think I knew about you until 3, 4, maybe years ago. And I've been in this work, primarily in Texas, but pretty
Right.
publicly for close to 20 years. And you and I were talking about this one before we came on. One of the first court cases that I worked on was on behalf of abortion survivors for the partial abortion case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court. There was a federal law on this. It was challenged and so on. So Gianna Jessen was one of my clients, and I was mentioning to you a young little boy, Zachary Kloppenstein. But I spent a good amount of time looking for people that had survived abortions, which seemed like, very unlikely. I don't remember coming across your name at that time. And, there might not have been a lot of information. This was, 15, 16 years ago, but that's just more evidence of, how important it is that you are out there. And you had a book that came out a little while back. You Carried Me, A Daughter's Memoir. Your second book is out I know is getting a lot of attention already, that focuses on that survival network. You say, according to your website, there's been over 600 survivors that you've connected with from abortion. Tell us the name of the book and why it was important for you to put it together.
Yeah, my second book, just published by Focus on the Family in Tyndale, is Abortion Survivors Break Their Silence. And it's sort of like this dovetailed impact and purpose of that book. First of all, it's to educate not just the pro-life movement, but our culture. And I would challenge any abortion supporters to pick up this book, because so many people, right, like to come at us even in social media and go, "Oh, those abortion survivors, they're just these Republican made, machines to restrict women's rights to abortion." And I'm like, "Hey, have you listened to this story?" And they're like, "No, I don't have to. I know that it's just made up." No, for real. Just pick up the book, okay? Pick up the book. Abortion survivors are real people with real stories, and they deserve to be heard and seen for who they are. And so, right, it's very much about awareness, but it's also at the same time giving other people like me a voice for the first time in history. There has never been a book like this before, believe it or not, Jonathan. Never before in the pro-life movement have we had a collection of abortion survivor stories
Wow.
together to show the diversity of our experience, right? I mean, you guys know Claire Colwell really well. Claire's a
Yep.
friend of mine. Claire's a
I'm
twin,
going to see her
right?
tomorrow. We're going to be interviewing her at the Capitol, Texas.
Yes. So Claire is a twin whose twin didn't survive a D&E, and she survived. I survived a failed abortion that should have taken my life as a single baby. There is such diversity in our experiences. And so that's also what we need to spread awareness of and give other people a voice, right? For so long, it was just like Gianna, and then it was Claire and I that entered into that narrative, right, of trying to shift the narrative and give people like us a voice. And then I added in Josiah Presley, who was on TV with us many times, right? And I'd add a handful of people. And no survivor should have to share their story, but they should have the opportunity to have a voice.
Well, look, I can't imagine what that's like. I haven't gone through that experience, but like other people, I've had, traumas or heartbreaks or, the things that have happened in my life that I could think of and remember and still experience at times as traumatic, and extremely difficult. And so I know what it's like with those situations and feeling like, no one really knows my story. And, you start talking about it and people don't understand it and they come at you negatively, whatever the case may be. The value of having a network like this is incredible and so important, particularly as now we move forward, Roe versus Wade being overturned. But before we move forward, I want to step back for just a second. And you take us where you want to go, but talk to me about what it was like that at 14, you became aware that you were an abortion survivor.
Yeah, this is the diversity of experience again. So, I think even in the pro-life movement, people think they know what a survivor's experience is. And in reality, it's very complex and very unique. So I am also an adoptee like Claire, but we have actually found that most survivors are raised in their biological family.
Wow.
And that, I know it tends to catch people off guard, but it proves what we know to be true, Jonathan. The baby was never the problem, right? It was the circumstances that woman was going through, that the family was facing. Now, I will preface that to say what I have found in our work is that because we've never really been able to identify these women going through this and the families and the survivors, we've never met them in their need, right? We've never served them with psychological support, emotional, mental, spiritual, right? Long-term parenting and family support. And so there tend to be a lot of broken families because of what abortion does to them. And then the shock and the trauma of the abortion that didn't succeed. And then the guilt and the shame that is compounded in that. And right, that trauma builds upon trauma. And so then we see patterns of abuse and neglect in families. And as I told somebody else the other day, a successful abortion is not the solution to that problem, right? When people go, oh, it only, no, not the answer. The answer is, wow, we need to see this for what it is and identify women going through this and families and survivors and serve them well.
No, you're absolutely right. We're talking with Melissa Ohden. She is an abortion survivor. She leads the Abortion Survivors Network. She's got an incredible book out right now, just came out this year. I'm excited that you partner with Focus on the Family. Texas Values is the official family policy council that Focus on the Family works with for the state of Texas. It's a network of 40 state groups across the country, and they continue to do great work up there at Focus on the Family. We'll put a graphic up of the book. We're going to put a link in the show notes, and on Facebook, you'll see a link to the book. We encourage you to get it. Okay, this show and segment is about your story because it's absolutely incredible. I'll just tell you for a brief second, though, that I've had some personal touch with this issue, as you mentioned in the opening, with my own family, seeing my sister as a high school senior get pregnant and go through that experience. My nephew is, I don't know how old he is now, 30 or whatever. But, my parents were married. We went to church, and it brought us, closer, but it put it to the test. And I tell you what, you are absolutely right that a lot of the brokenness that can come from that, when people aren't prepared or whatever the circumstances are, it's a lot to deal with. It can be really tough. And so, having someone there in that moment, not 10 years later, and there's still value to that, but in that moment, what that's happening, that can be sensitive to that and can understand, hey, I know what you're going through. Let us help. I'm sure that's been a big game changer for these issues, or could be.
Yeah, most definitely. And that is, right, that's what we are called to live out is, not just in word, right, that we're pro-life. It's about in action. And, I find it rather absurd, if I'm being honest, that the pro-life movement is often accused of only caring about children, and specifically children until they're born. Because when you look throughout the pro-life movement, right, we are the folks who are loving women every opportunity we can, and the children, and for the long run. And so, yeah, I mean, for those that are turning out for your rally tomorrow, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for not just showing up tomorrow in defense of life and for, the humanity of women like my birth mother, but for showing up every single day in your
Yeah, look,
families, in your schools, in your communities.
that's right. I mean, that is what it's about. It is not a one-time, hey, give us a phone call, hope it works out. I mean, it is a walk daily for those people individually and the people in the pro-life movement, particularly at the pregnancy care centers and some of the other ministries like yourself that are doing the work. They're walking with the women daily. The state of Texas has a program called Thriving Families that gives financial support for nonprofit entities that are involved in the Pregnancy Resource Network and so on. But it's not just when the baby's in the mother's womb or born, it's up to 3 years afterwards. We know how important it could be to have that long-term support. You were at the National March for Life last week. I mentioned my oldest son was there, Johnny. I've been there several times. Like I said, it was like a winter wonderland. And tell us what it was about, because it's changed a little bit. Roe versus Wade is overturned, but there's still work to do.
There is work to do. And that is, as you can imagine, Jonathan, for somebody like me, whenever I've gone to the National March, it's complicated, right?
Yes,
For me,
I bet.
because I recognize every single day what a gift my life is. And I am forever grateful that my life was spared. And I'm grateful, just like everyone else is, that we can show up and march. But it is always a time of mourning for me, over knowing how many children have not been as fortunate as me. And so it is this time of really remembrance and mourning. And yet at the same time, we have this juxtaposition, I think, as a movement of also coming together in a place of joy to say, in the face of this incredible suffering and injustice, we still choose to be the face of love and joy. And we come together in a place of joy going forward to work together. And really, that's what I've loved seeing after the overturning of Roe, is understanding the need to still have the national presence and understand we are not done yet. We are not done yet. But then at the same time, help make that move to the states to say, okay, we also need to gather, just like you've done so well in Texas for so long, and have a presence there and take action there. So it's this great balance.
No, you're absolutely right. We're talking with Melissa Ohden. She is an abortion survivor. She runs the Abortion Survivors Network. She's got a great book that's out. She's been involved in the movement for quite a long time, is a wonderful speaker. And she was one of the speakers at the Texas Rally for Life here recently, a few years ago. That event is on Saturday, January 27th from 1 to 3 at the Texas Capitol. Free event. Come out. It's going to be wonderful. And then across the street from the Capitol, our office, we're having a reception right after the rally wraps up. We invite people to come by and say hello. But, Melissa, if you're there at the March for Life, and you were, I've been there several times, you realize this is a movement that is coming from the ground up too. Kids, high schoolers, teenagers, families. It's striking that a lot of people don't realize that, and you're not really in touch with that if you've been there. So, if you've not been there, but it's evident, and I was so encouraged that my son's Catholic high school sent a group up there. They do it every year. A lot of schools do that. But, my daughter is a part of the middle school pro-life group. I've not pushed it on them. They're around it, of course, but they're in touch with it now, and they're starting to develop their own leadership. My son helped start the group a couple of years ago. Are you seeing that too, that the youth of America are a big part of this movement?
Oh, yeah. And that's one of my greatest joys, is seeing the young people, seeing the children. And for me, pretty much every year, I'm out there speaking at many events, right? And being in many places, but there are so many great youth events that I am involved in year after year. This year, I spoke at a Lutherans for Life event. And in the past, right, I've done big archdiocesan events. And, this is obviously, Jonathan, it's always been a part of the movement. But I think as we are looking at where we are and where we need to head, we know that reaching youth at younger and younger ages and stages is so important to share the message about the humanity of every preborn child, and loving women and children well. And so I think, right, as we talk about the future of the movement, that's what we're going to see more, is more of youth involvement and youth leading us.
Well, and I don't know what the connection is, if you will. I'm sure somebody's looked at this and studied it or whatever, but just in my own experience, I've put together a few ideas of why it seems like the youth are a little bit more involved, or they understand it, or the connection there with the movement. But I have to think at least part of it is, number one, kids always seem to react to babies really well. Like they get excited and mom's pregnant or whatever, that, there's just some excitement that they seem to have naturally. But also I think there's part of it that they're like, wait a minute, I'm not that old. That was me recently. I was born. My life could have ended. I just think it becomes, really simple to them, and almost like, it touches them and they're like, whoa, this is, kind of an important issue. And so whatever the case may be, it's a huge part of it. And we continue to see value to that and encouragement. And I guess part of that is over 50 years of a movement since Roe versus Wade was decided, that time is allowed for those things to happen, and for us to have a more compassionate approach, particularly with your experience and others, right? To know it's complicated sometimes for people to be involved in this, but it's necessary and it has value. But the more that we can be considerate to that, so it's not a traumatizing experience. I mean, you mentioned this, and we're going to wrap up in a minute, but 5 days, there you are in this, life intended, life-killing solution is so, it's hard to hear it talked about, but that is what happened. You survived it. And now you get to continue to be such a blessing to people. But, we all sort of have to think, we did this, if you will, as a country. It was allowed to happen. And I think it's necessary for people to take a moment to think about that, so we don't do that again, or we can move in a direction across the country where we say no more.
Right, absolutely. And, this is, again, the balancing act of, we have to share the truth in age appropriate ways. And if we don't, right, we're doing an injustice. We're doing an injustice to the preborn. We're doing an injustice to children who already know the truth, and they need us to continue to guide them. And so, yeah, this is up to us as parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and teachers and youth group leaders and all these things, right? No matter what somebody's particular role is, we all have the opportunity to pour into not only young people, but our entire communities and families. And this is what we do going forward.
Now, look, and see, I told you we might end up going long. I get wrapped up. I'm getting all worked up. Look, I mean, you have so much to share that's so important. Go to her website, melissaohden.com. Ohden is how her last name is spelled. You can find more about some of the incredible pro-life work that she's doing. I look forward to seeing you again. We're going to invite you to come out to one of our events. We're doing events all the time. We do a big event in September, in the fall, and other times of the year, but we'll send an invitation out to have you on. I think you do a great job. I think you continue to make an impact, and we're so thankful that you have that continued courage to have your voice heard and encourage other people that have gone through what you've gone through to do the same. And so God bless you, Melissa, and thank you for being our guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Jonathan, thank you. And just my last word I want to say, first of all, I am happy to show up anytime. And secondly, I will bring lots of abortion survivors, because Texas is one of those states that has some of the largest number of abortion survivors that we're connected with.
Yeah, well, we'll look forward to that opportunity, and, still work to do on the important pro-life issue. Thank you, Melissa Ohden. Great to have you on, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.
Well, I probably did not leave a lot of time for some of the wrap up that I like to do. There is so much information to share. We might end up, and sometimes we're doing special segments of this, right? That we're working in with people like Melissa are available to take advantage of that opportunity. This is why we've got a great studio to bring you this information. You see the backdrop is a little bit different. We got some members of our team that are out this week, so we switched things up a little bit. But we still got to bring a great guest on. Thank you to members of our team on the back end that are helping put it together. If you see value to our work, txvalues.org. Go to our website right now. Make that tax-deductible donation so we can continue to be involved in the work that we're doing. As I mentioned, We're going to put a graphic up in just a minute. We're going to be at the Texas Rally for Life tomorrow. We're going to work on live streaming it, but come in person. I mean, these are some of these events that you got to experience in person to get the full sense and strength of it. And every single time I go, I come back home and go, gosh, I'm glad I went this year. And I go every year, right? But I'm still, something new happens, some new experience, some feeling, some emotion, some connection point happens. And I know a lot of times I go and people that don't go every year, I'm not saying I'm all that important, but they're like happy to see me there because maybe they don't know anyone else there. And they're like, gosh, I didn't bring a group. You know, I'm here by myself. Oh, there's Jonathan, right? You know, they recognize me and that's great. I love to be. And so, I mean, come by yourself if you have to. You know, no big deal. You'll see someone you know probably, or something you hear will matter to you, or you just want to observe it. You're like, oh, I don't know about that. What, that's downtown, and downtown Austin's crazy, whatever. There'll be security. You'll be safe. Don't worry about any of that. Like I said, a lot of families and, you know, really a considerate but an important environment in a setting. But there is something valuable, important about walking down Congress, which you'll be walking right by our office, 1005 Congress. Come by afterwards and spend some time with us. And, you know, this is what we do, right? Government belongs to those who show up. This is our state capitol. It's one of the most recognized capitals in the country. It's without a doubt one of the most recognized buildings in our entire state, right? And it's glorious, all right? When you make that walk up Congress on the South Steps, walking up to the Capitol, and there are thousands of people around you that feel the same way and are supportive of this issue, and you're reminded, we had a role in overturning Roe versus Wade. We made history. We saved lives. Abortions every year are an average of 50,000 in Texas before the heartbeat law and before the Roe versus Wade case got overturned last year. We're saving lives. I mean, we're estimating that those numbers, because there are some limited circumstances where you're seeing a few abortions still take place. Don't get me started on that topic. I'll talk about that later or another segment. But when you take that number, I don't know what the official number in Texas now is. You can't trust a lot of reporting. From 50,000, I don't know what it's down to, you know, but it's pretty much ended. So we've saved over 40,000 lives, you know, every year since then. And we've got a daily ticker, if you will, or a counter, TexasHeartbeatLaw.com. We're going to have a new website called Love Them Both that we put up, LoveThemBothTexas.com, excuse me. And we're counting that number of estimating how many lives have been saved. Think about that, right? You're talking about over 100,000. I mean, that's the football field at Kyle Stadium or DKR Texas Memorial Stadium where the Longhorns play. I mean, you know, you're talking about a lot of people. I mean, you save lives when you're involved in this movement, okay? When you invest in our work, you're saving a life. This is the work that we do on these issues. This is how we continue to stay involved. And this is how you help us save lives and make history. Myself, and then along with our team, we've been a part of every single pro-life law that's been passed since 2005. And in many cases, we've been leading those efforts. All right. You're supporting us. You're helping us do that. You're making a difference. We're not just a talking head and, you know, we come on here every week and give an opinion. The large majority of our work is on the ground at the Capitol, working with legislators, getting involved in court cases, representing people individually in a legislative issue or in a legal issue. And so we're directly involved in the process. We're on the front lines. Okay. There's no doubt. You want to go to our website and look at some of the recent histories and victories we've had on the life movement, including in Texas, in Austin. I was a part of the legal team that beat the city of Austin when they tried to put an ordinance up that, you know, was really designed to try to shut pregnancy centers down, pregnancy care centers down. You know, there's over 300 pregnancy centers in the state of Texas, probably just about anywhere you look. Go to TexasHeartbeatLaw.com or LoveThemBothTexas.com. There's a search engine. Put your zip code in, and you're likely to see there's a pregnancy center really close to where you are. We have to get the resources into women, but we have to make people aware that the resources exist. The help is there. You are not alone, because we love them both, the mother and the child. And so I don't know where I am on time. I told member of our team I'd do a good job of keeping track of it. So I think I'm just about out of time on this segment of the Texas Values Report. I'm going to be at the Rally for Life, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be there with my family. It is safe for families. My kids' school is going to be there. Our middle school, Holy Family Catholic School, is going to be there. A lot of schools. People are going to come in that morning. Tremendous amount of things to do. Listen, these are just some of the many reasons why you should invest in us. And if you're at the event, come to 1005 Congress afterwards, our building, for a reception that we're going to have. But give a donation today to txvalues.org. This is how together we save lives. And this is how together, with our team that works on issues and has supporters all across the state, this is how together we protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.